Good morning, everyone. My topic today is about Brahmacharya Ashrama, how it is related to the Indian system, into the ancient Indian system of the life of the Brahmin, and how it could be used in the educational system in the future. In his work on Indian brain, Sri Aurobindo speaks about it highly. We have stated the main psychological principles on which the ancient Indians based their scheme of education. By the training of Brahmacharya, they placed all the energy of which the system was capable and which could be spared from bodily functions at the service of the brain. In this way, they not only strengthened the medha, or grasping power, the dhi, or subtlety and swiftness of thought conception, the memory and the creative intellectual force, making the triple force of memory, invention, judgment, comprehensive and analytic. But they greatly enlarged the range, no less than intensity, of the absorbing, storing, and generative mental activities. So we can see that the energy which is needed for the functions of the intellect in the physical body is required from the body, and it is highly improving the functionality of the spirit. So the highest creative intellects in Europe, continues Sri Aurobindo, have achieved sovereignty by limitation, by striving to excel only in one field of a single intellectual province, in one field of a single intellectual province, or at most in two. When they have been versatile, it has been by sacrificing height to breadth. But in India, it is the greatest who have been the most versatile and passed from one field of achievement to another without sacrificing an inch of their height or an iota of their creative intensity. Easily, unfalteringly, with an assured mastery. This easy and unfailing illumination, crowning the unfailing energy created by Brahmacharya, was due to the discipline which developed sattva, or inner illumination. This illumination makes the acquisition of knowledge and all other intellectual operations easy, spontaneous, swift, decisive, and comparatively unfatiguing to body and or brain. In these two things lies the secret of Aryan intellectual achievement. Brahmacharya and Sattvic development created the brain of India. It was perfected by yoga. So now I would like us to view this particular flexible way of thinking which created the archetypal vision of humanity and all the processes connected with the building of society, a human being, the world in general. So I would like to project the scheme here, wait a minute, which would give us the idea. Here it is. So archetypal thinking in Indian tradition. So as we see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 4 different sections. which covered different endeavors in the Indian society and philosophy. So we can see that ashramas, Brahmacharya ashrama, which starts from the childhood of 6 years old till approximately 30 years old, then Grihastha, the ashrama of the married life and family life, then 25 years or so, then Vanaprastha, going into the forest, and finally sannyasa. Total dedication of all the activities to the divine. So these 4 different ashramas actually build the whole vision of Indian life, of the Brahmin's life. So when he was 6 years old, he was initiated into the studies of the Veda. Brahmacharya is translated as following oneself or following the spirit, but truly speaking, it is studies of the Veda, because Brahman in the Vedic language is the word or the hymn, the mantra which is rising from the heart. So these mantras were studied in this period from the age of 6 till the age of approximately 30 years old. So during this period of studies of the Veda, the student lived in the house of his teacher or in Gurukula and did all the work needed in the house, and at the same time studied by heart the texts of the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, all the Samhita texts, which is quite a number of texts. There are students who studied only the Rig Veda, there are students who studied 2 Vedas, 3, and sometimes even all 4 Vedas. And not only the Samhita texts, they also studied the Brahmana texts, so the commentaries written on Samhitas, and Aranyakas and Upanishads. And these 4 different texts, they are all here mentioned, Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka, Upanishad, interestingly enough, also correspond to 4 different ashramas. Samhita is the period of the mantric text, of the text Shruti, which was revealed to the Vedic rishis, who brought them down to us, to humanity. Brahmanas were commentaries following the Samhita texts, which were written in the perspective of the ritualistic and mythological manner, explaining the texts of Samhita in this way, especially applying the texts of mantras to the rituals, to the daily usage. So the whole day and the whole year was ritualized. So there was no free space for the person to live his own life. It was in accordance with devatas, with nakshatras, and so on, with the full and new moon. So every day there was something to do with regard to the devatas, pitris, and so on. So there were many yagas, many sacrifices which were to be performed. And so the Brahmin was involved from morning till evening, every day, with some kind of sacrificial action. There was Agnihotra sacrifice also, to which we will come again. This Agnihotra is daily oblation into the fire. So Brahmanic literature assigned the mantras to the period of everyday life. And here, as you see, it corresponds with the second stage of Grihastha, where these performances of the rituals were constantly maintained. And in the Vanaprastha, in going to the forest, literally, leaving for the forest. When the first grandson is born, the parents had to leave their house and go to the forest, to live in the forest as the ascetics. And you can see that Aranyaka is properly assigned to this period. In the Aranyaka, we have the explanation of the rituals and the texts in the more metaphysical way. Finally, certain questions are answered here. Why these texts are there and what they are for. And so after finishing the married life, the person starts his observation of the whole life, of what he learned by heart in the previous stage, and how he lived it through with rituals through his married life. Now he reflects upon it through Aranyakas. And once this 25 years is over, this period of 25 years is over, he moves to the period of Upanishads, sannyasa period, where the Upanishads are explaining to him or giving him the knowledge finally of the spirit. So he dedicates himself totally to the spirit. He doesn't live anywhere. He doesn't have a place to live in the forest. He moves around as a sannyasi, begging for food and living from whatever is coming to him. So dedicating himself totally to the divine. So you can see that the whole life of the Brahmin was one educational project. He starts it with Brahmacharya, so with studies of the Vedas by heart. Once he learned it by heart, he applies those texts to his daily life, married life. Once he is finished with this, he starts reflecting upon the text and his married life and rituals in the forest, and once that is over, he is totally giving all his knowledge and understanding to the divine and lives only from that what divine provides. Sannyasa. So you can see this archetypal thinking in every place. So as I put here 4 seasons because I'm choosing this first section connected to the dynamics of time. You see, this is the time lifespan from Brahmacharya to Sannyasa, and also spring, summer, autumn, and winter compared with 4 seasons. I'm taking it from the Purusha Suktam. Then I take it in terms of bigger yugas or portions of times, and Satya Yuga, Treta, Dvapara, and finally Kali Yuga. So you can see the same archetypal way of thinking. This is on the scale of time. Then we take it on the social scale of the Varnas. So we have Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Also we have the description of these Varnas we have in Purusha Suktam. Actually, I have this here. So you can see the text. Yad Purusham Vyadadhuh Katidha Vyakalpayan Mukham Kim Asya Kaubahu Kauru Pada Uchyete. When they distributed the Purusha, how many parts did they arrange? What did his mouth become, his hands, his thighs, his legs? Brahmanosya Mukham Asit. Brahmana became his mouth. Bahu Rajanyah Kritah. And his hands, and his shoulders and hands became Rajanya, Kshatriya. Uru tad asya yad Vaishyah. What was thighs became Vaishya. Padbhyam Shudra Ajayata. From the feet Shudra was born. So we can see that this archetype of anthropomorphic structure was um, uh, was actually um, applied to the society and to the individual. So there was a universal Purusha and the individual Purusha. So this anthropomorphic vision of the world is actually presented throughout. You can see this in the temples, you can see it in the individual and universal approach to Purusha. We see this beautiful text found in the Aitareya Upanishad, where the universal Purusha was sacrificed, the same sacrifice of Purusha, and all his faculties came out and plunged into the inconscient ocean. Yeah? And from the inconscient ocean, they started to rise and find their abiding place in man. And so this is the formation of the individual being. So from the universal faculties to the individual application of these faculties. So everything is organized around this anthropomorphic structure. So Sri Aurobindo continues. I will come back to my scheme later, but first I will cover something important for understanding of Brahmacharya. The sex energy can be controlled and diverted from the sex purpose. So it can be sublimated. It doesn't have to be thrown out as it is usually in nature, and used for the aesthetic and artistic or other creation and productiveness, or preserved for heightening of the intellectual or other energies. This is an interesting view because, truly speaking, all the aesthetic and artistic creations require this energy. So we can say that the art and culture are in some way sublimation of this energy, and every creativity. It is well known also in Ayurveda that this impulse, this ayu, life force, depends on the sexual energy, on this ojas which is within. We will come to it in a minute. Or it can be redirected and used for the intellectual, for the power to empowering our brain. This was well known in ancient India and was described as the conversion of retas into ojas by Brahmacharya. Retas, the sex fluid, retas means the stream, consists of two elements, one meant for sex purposes, the other as basis of general energy, of energy of the body. And if the sex action is not indulged and sex fluid is prevented from being spent away, it turns into ojas. The whole theory of Brahmacharya is based upon that by the yogis. So we have these terms, retas, the sexual fluid, or the stream literally from reed to flow. Tapas, spiritual heat felt in the body during meditation or concentration. Ojas, spiritual vigor, which is felt after union with and immersion into cosmic energies. Tejas, spiritual light observed within. And Vidyut, electrical power, which courses through the body during yoga. You can feel sometimes when you do intense pranayama, especially kumbhaka, then you feel that how the vidyut energy is moving through the limbs of the body. So the question was asked to Sri Aurobindo, what is the process by which retas is transformed into ojas? Answer. This is the answer of Sri Aurobindo. The fundamental physical unit is the retas, in which the tejas, the heat, the light, and electricity in man is involved and hidden. So the energy is hidden in the fluid, in the seed. All energy is thus latent in the retas. The energy may be either expanded physically or conserved. All passion, lust, desire wastes the energy by pouring it either in the gross form or a sublimated, subtle form out of the body. That's the creativity, the aesthetic and poetic and artistic creativity. It can be sublimated. It can be also poured out in this form. On the other hand, all self-control conserves the energies in the retas. And conservation always brings with it increase. So when we conserve this energy, it grows, piles up. But the needs of the physical body are limited, and the excess of energy must create a surplus, which has to turn itself to some use other than the physical. According to the ancient theory, Ratos is Jala fluid, full of light and heat and electricity. In one word, of Tejas. Tejas is this brightness of consciousness or energy. The excess of Ratos turns first into heat or tapas, which stimulates the whole system. And it is for this reason that all forms of self-control and austerity are called tapas or tapasya, because they generate the heat or stimulus, which is a source of powerful action and success. Secondly, it turns to tejas or light. So tapas, the energy which is accumulated by holding back the retas, accumulates tejas. And tapas it generates tejas, brightness, light, the energy which is at the source of all knowledge, that very illumination within. Thirdly, it turns to vidyut, or electricity, which is at the basis of all forceful action, whether intellectual or physical. So even for the physical action, it is needed. In the vidyut, again, is involved the ojas, or prana shakti, the primal energy which proceeds from ether. The tejas, refining from jala to tapas, tejas and vidyut, and from vidyut to ojas, fills the system with physical strength, energy, brain power. And its last form of ojas rises to the brain and informs it with that primal energy, which is the most refined form of matter and nearest to spirit. It is ojas that creates a spiritual force, or virya. by which a man attains to spiritual knowledge, spiritual love and faith, spiritual strength. It follows that the more we can, by Brahmacharya, increase the store of tapas, heat, tejas, light, vidyut, electric, and ojas, vigor, the more we shall fill ourselves with utter energy of the works of the body, heart, mind, and spirit. So I'm coming back to this vision of archetypal thinking to conclude my presentation. So on the ground of this powerful, spiritual, illumined capacity of consciousness in the body, the Indian mind saw the pattern of development of the society in time and space. So they are kind of overlapping or repeating the same cycles, as it were, within the time, within the dynamic truth. So we can see it throughout Vedic tradition. If we take ritualistic part, Agnihotra sacrifice, we can see that there are 4 priests. So there is Hotar, Advarya, Udgatar, and there is Brahman. So Hotar reads the verses from the Rig Veda and makes oblation into Garhapatya, and he is located in the east and he belongs to Prithvi. So this is all Grihastha Ashrama. So Hotar makes oblation to the fire, Garhapatya in the east, which belongs to Prithvi, into his human life on earth. Then to the south, we have Dakshina fire, where Advaryu makes oblation into that fire, into Dakshina fire, and recites the verses from Yajurveda. And this belongs to the Antariksha space in between heaven and earth, to the vital realm, pranic realm. And all his oblations and offerings are meant for the Pitris, ancestors or forefathers. So, and to the north, so to the south on the right and to the north on the left, if we face the east, we have the Ahavaniya fire, where Udgatari, the singer of the Samaveda hymns, would make oblation into this fire, Ahavaniya, for the gods. And that realm belongs to heaven. So here we have it, heaven and earth and space in between, 3 realms, 3 fires. And to the west we have only one person there, and that is Brahman standing there. There is no fire there. He observes all the ritual and makes prayashchittam, makes the what we call the correction in his mind of all possible mistakes made during the ritual. Yeah. So, and because he's correcting everything in his mind, he knows all the movements, all the texts in his mind. So the ritual is performed properly. So he represents as the Aitareya Brahmana says the mind, the heaven, and 3 priests represent the triple word, and together they build the sacrifice between heaven and earth. The sacrifice is taking place. Vayu, Pavamana is Yajna. So here you see the same archetypal thinking of 4 divisions. So the Hotar belongs to man, Manushya, the Advaryu represents the Pitris, the forefathers, and Udgatar makes oblations for the gods. We can see the same archetypal thinking in the approach to the spiritual divisions of Sat, Chitta, Pasananda, and Vijnana, and four Mahashaktis, Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati. They are reflecting the four Varnas, as you can see. So he is Brahmana, Maheshwari, knowledge. There is Kshatriya, Mahakali, or power. Mahalakshmi is bliss or exchange of bliss. This is Vaishya. And Mahasaraswati is perfection in the manifestation, Shudra, the divine Shudra. So you can see beautiful vision which is projected onto all ways and endeavors of being and thinking and perceiving the world. This is the mind which is trained and which is forged by Brahmacharya, Indian mind which sees everywhere the same process. We are living in the holographic world where the same truth is found in all fields of our endeavor. So here I stop my presentation and open to any questions. It would be interesting to see whether we have some questions. Otherwise, thank you for attention and wish you all the best. I hope that our educational system can take it in and see in this Brahmacharya period the most important element of the development of human beings and the power of human brain and spirit within the body. So the body has the spiritual means to support the spiritual development of the person. So thank you and namaste.